Right. So, Sean is the VP of Customer Engagement at ZenDrive, a leading driving behavior software analytics company. He's responsible for all touch points with ZenDrive's customers, and leads a global team of pre-sales engineers, solution architects, professional services, customer success, and support. So a pretty broad purview at ZenDrive. He was previously head of partner enablement at IoT ecosystem development within Nokia Software. Prior to that, he was vice president of business development at M-Formation. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was 15 or 16 years that you were there. So you saw quite a bit while you were there. And he holds a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Delaware. Thank you, Sean, so much for joining us. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So start off by telling us where in the world your background is.
Well, that's the Grand Canyon. That was, I think, the last big vacation pre-COVID, right, where we were in Sedona and took the family on a nice little road trip out to the canyon. So it was a fantastic trip, that part of the country. It was my first time being out there. And little did I know we'd be stuck together for the next few years after that. So it was a very, very special vacation when I think about it.
Right. Yeah. Glad you got your vacation time in before you knew how much you needed it.
Absolutely.
I'd like to start, and for those folks who joined us in the first few minutes, we were asking how long people have been in the world of customer success. I'd love to pose the same question to you, because I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about in how you answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, I said like 10 plus years because like a lot of people, we didn't exactly call it that, right? I came from this consulting background in the first part of my career. And I was in the traditional management consulting, big six firms at that time. And I think that's a great preparation in customer success. And I think when I got to my first startup, then it was all touch points with the customer, everything from the pre-sales side to helping them on board to our platform, to the implementation, customizations, starting up our first support desk, all of that. So from that standpoint, it's been many years in customer success, but I think it really all starts from that kind of consulting background, right? Because you're just getting thrown into these client situations and getting things done, right? And it was a great proving ground for me. I think those early days at like Pricewaterhouse and Anderson and ultimately with IBM, it instilled certain lessons and methodologies and approaches with our customers that I try to apply today.
Yeah. Can you think of anything that is a direct application, like something that you've had to do recently that you can say, oh, I learned how to do that, 15 years ago when I did this client engagement?
Yeah, well, when I came into ZenDrive, I inherited a team, and they were great people, but we were struggling with our onboarding, and we didn't have a good systematic approach, in my opinion, to onboard in a better way. So I kind of took a lot of those project planning lessons that I'd had from my consulting days, not even the startup side, but just from those consulting days, to reapply with the team here and pick some tools to help us. I think I remember it was Smart Sheets initially that we started using in that regard. I hadn't used that particular one, but it was pretty easy to pick up and enable the team to start really structure how we're going to go about our engagements and be a bit more disciplined with it. We were making this transition from a certain customer segmentation to another, which is much more high touch, much more involved, much more complicated. So we really had to structure our plans, and that's what our equivalents on the customer side expected from their provider. So I really had to kind of guide a few of our earlier CSMs and project managers through that to make sure we did it in that approach. I kind of think it was almost train the trainer. And we went through that those first few months and those first few iterations. And I think it up-leveled the team. And also I was able to also bring on some more experienced resources onto the team as well.
Yeah. Well, so now that you mentioned that, because I know that you've been at ZenDrive for something around 3 years, I'd love to hear kind of how that has evolved over the time that you've been there. So starting with coming in and trying to up level the onboarding process, I'm sure that
Yeah.
there's been kind of journey and evolution over time.
Yeah, we've had tremendous growth. We brought in more support resources, more CSMs, more solution engineers globally into the company. And it was really kind of identifying and nailing down our processes initially, right? Really defining that. And I think initially that the processes were a bit loose. We had smaller clients; they could kind of get by without being so rigorous in that engagement. And I think when I came on board, I tried to be very process oriented. I wanted to define those steps that could help us to scale and grow and handle the new wave of customers that were coming on board. So over time, we've been growing. Actually, we just started looking at some tool selection most recently, but we started off all with our just basic Salesforce, Google Sheets, good old smart sheets to initially kick off and get things done for our engagements. And that's been sufficient up until now. And then you start to get to a certain point in your maturity where, okay, we think we have this process identified pretty well. Now let's see if we can find the right tool to help us take it to the next level, right? Which is what we're doing at the moment. But I kind of make reference to this book, The E-Myth Revisited. If anyone's ever read that, is about kind of defining your model and almost kind of franchising a solution, if you will. So I said, let's make sure that every role, every process, every procedure is laid out and very clear for all of us to repeat. And so you can almost, take me out of the equation and you can do all these steps yourself and so forth there. So it's a continuing evolution, especially as we innovate with our product, and there's some new parts of the solution coming out that changes all the procedures and practices that we fine-tuned. But that's what we've been going through again and again. So now it's been very fun to look at some of these tools. I think if you had asked me 3 years ago, I may have said, oh, these tools are a bit overstated. We don't need all of that. I'm starting to appreciate now, given the disparity of what we need to grab information from and to bring it all to one collective resource can make our team a lot more efficient, right? And those efficiencies, improve our operation. It helps us to respond more quickly and see things faster, what's going on with our customers. So that's been good.
Yeah, one of the things that you and I had chatted about in our sort of pre-event conversation was doing the stuff that works first, and then figuring out what software you need to support it, versus trying to or rather allowing a software vendor to guide what your process is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we've done that with, especially like in the areas of customer health, right? Because I really wanted to be laser focused and try to be as prescriptive and proactive as possible with our customers to, avoid issues, think ahead, and be strategic and advise them. And so by looking at, and we are a data analytics company, right? A driving data analytics company. And so our customers are expecting that kind of consultative advice and insights we can provide. And we have to make sure our software is performing at optimal levels. So there's lots of data points to gather to make sure that that's all performing well, from their usage, from adoption, from accuracy, from all those kind of points to figure those things out, and then see if if the desired outcomes are truly being met, and pull all of that data together and ultimately figure out, what's the respective health. We establish our own grading system, all those KPIs around that, so that when I say that they're green or yellow, I can get down to exactly what component is making them yellow. Why is it I am flagging that, right? We did not do a QBR. They didn't answer the survey, or they did answer the survey and the answer wasn't that great, right? So these are all things that are contributing to it, right? The business outcomes weren't met. We don't have a good relationship with that stakeholder. So I kind of have like a 15-point system to pull all of that together. Now, when I looked at some platforms, they may have oversimplified that and so forth, but I don't want that influencing how we approach. I said, listen, we've learned through trial and error. These are all the points, and maybe tomorrow to be another point, maybe 16 points. But as of now, these are all the points that can lead to whether it's a renewal, whether it's an upsell, whether it's growth, and all those kind of things. We've identified what makes sense for our business and what we want to repeat. So these are the things we need to look for and be aware of any crosswinds as that comes across.
Yeah, and I want to quickly invite anyone who's watching here, please feel free to enter your questions in the chat, and I'll do my best to integrate them into our conversation. So please do. I encourage you to interact with us and with each other in the chat. Sean, because we are here to geek out on CS leadership a little bit more, I kind of want to keep digging into some of the internal process that you've put together. And again, we may get questions from the audience that go along those lines or in a different direction, but I'm really interested to learn a bit more about the internal management systems that you've put in place. How often do you meet with the team? How often are you checking in with your employees? Things like that.
Absolutely. I have a global team, so and it's sometimes challenging. We have a few sub-management layers, primarily in the support function, and then it's a lot more of me directly managing that team. I have a team of approximately 18 at the moment, and it's a mix, like I said, of CS and sales engineers, architects, and support resources as well. We try to have at least one weekly team meeting every week, but due to the geographic distribution, especially with Asia Pacific in particular, we have to adjust and split it into two, kind of like the APAC team call and so forth. And during COVID, especially, I was concerned, even though the team's always been many remote resources, but I was concerned about being a bit disconnected. So around at the beginning of COVID, I think I was listening to another podcast or so, and I heard about a book club, and I said, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't we start there with my team as well? I was geeking out over various CS books and things like that, so I thought it'd be a good experience for the team to engage, to do something a little different, focus on leadership, focus on communication, focus on strategy, to get them out of the day-to-day, but also up-level their thinking as well. So we kind of instituted that. We meet once a month to discuss those books there and have a very engaging conversation. But in terms of just the journal management, we do our one-on-ones with every team member, usually on a bi-weekly basis, and weekly meetings with the team as we structure that. And then monthly, we have our fun book club session there where we get a lot of debate over what's the next book. And I've tried to encourage a little bit of competition. I kind of have a east side, west side, Eastern Hemisphere, Western Hemisphere battle, who has a better, more engaging book discussion and fun. And the rest of the company has tried to follow it there, but they haven't been able to do that just yet. So right now it's pretty much my team that has this engaging book club with everybody reading the book. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, sometimes a little competition can be really motivating.
It keeps it fun. It keeps it fun.
Yeah, exactly. What are you reading customer success books, or are you reading?
Not at all. It's, I mean, we right now we're reading Atomic Habits, right? We just started that. We finished a coaching book. We did a negotiation book. So we lots of different books, as long as we stick with the themes of leadership, management, communication. Those are kind of the key themes I stay in, bestsellers only. And I try to get relatively recent, past 10 years or so.
Yeah. I talked to someone recently who said, I don't read any books newer than 5 years. as a kind of filtering mechanism to see how long a book, like what the staying power of the book is.
Absolutely. Well, I had a member of my team that he's one of our support resources, and he said, Sean, I really love this. I haven't read anything since university time. It gets me thinking. It helps me engage our customers a little better. Even when we're negotiating there, he felt he had some tools to arm him. So I thought it was a great experience there. He's worked with our accounts, and I think it's helped that person grow and maybe, you know, move into more eventually a manager role.
Yeah, great. Wondered if you could say a little bit more about the vendor analysis that you're doing now, because you have figured out all of these systems and processes internally that work really well for you. How are you thinking then about identifying a vendor or a set of vendors that can still allow you to maintain that process?
Yeah, well, it's been, I think the CS community is great that I was able to get a lot of good recommendations, good evaluation frameworks there to assess and build an RFP relatively quickly with the various CS platforms out there, and just check with my peers to see who are they using, why do they like that one, and so forth. And so I brought in a member of my team. He's probably more of a CS ops kind of person. His role is a CSM, but he had that kind of CS ops experience. And I was really leveraging him because he's probably the most tool familiar person on the team and could help, you know, better help me make the assessment after gathering our requirements and putting out to the various vendors, and could compare against the leading platforms. We were semi-formal about it. We did evaluations. We had a formal demo accounts to go through, try different things, see what we can fit in, see if we can even sunset certain things like a smart sheets and put all the onboarding piece into the platform as well, right? That can make a better case and argument. I work very closely with our sales ops side, who's like the Salesforce guy, to make sure we can be tied in and integrate cleanly there as well. So all that's been part of our process there, and we're pretty close to making our selection. My goal was the end of the quarter. That gives me exactly 20 days to go. So to hold myself accountable to my own metric.
Great. And then finally, and time's moving super quickly, the macro environment. I feel like there's an increasing amount of buzz or noise about inflation and potentially like tech company valuations as well. And
Absolutely.
wondering if you felt that in any way.
Very much so.
Yeah. Well, so if you could say more of that generally, and I can ask.
Yeah, I think the fluctuations in the public markets overall is impacting the private sector, right? And I know we've been given the advice, you know, to make sure you have a very solid cash reserve. Now is not the right fundraising environment. Our company, we're a Silicon Valley based software firm. Our founders are like ex Google guys, super smart gentlemen. And but certainly the guidance has been to hunker down, because there's going to be a ways until, you know, mid 2023 when we think that is when things will open up better for fundraising or any other kind of exits and so forth. Not that we're necessarily looking at that ourselves, but we just need to prepare for those kind of things to occur then. So we're really focused on our customers right now. We're focused on obviously retention and acquisition of some new accounts, but my team is extremely focused on the retention of all of our primary accounts. And we've certainly seen a lot of folks delay certain buying decisions, and it's getting much more challenging to start off. So it's definitely affecting all of our business at the moment.
Yeah, I'm wondering specifically from the lens of customer success, does that put an increased emphasis within the company on retention? Like, is more emphasis focusing on retention than new sales all of a sudden, or is there any kind of hiring freeze, or are they saying, hey, we need to get you more people and resources because we really need to retain these clients?
Yeah, I think right now our company, we're kind of slowing things down on a hiring side, at least for the summer. We think that we have a very good model and projections for our growth, but we're just trying to be ultra conservative with our plans and maintain a certain amount of cash, you know, just in case anything happens there, right? So it's key for us. So I think we're trying to be very disciplined, you know, in that regard. And we've also highlighted to the company about the importance of retention. We kind of have those main strategic focuses for the company, and customer retention is right there in the top 3. So it's really put the highlight on my team and the focus there, as while our pre-sales and solution engineers are focused on the new account acquisition. The majority is heavily focused on retaining and expanding within our existing account base.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much, Sean. We're going to start switching to the networking portion of the event, but I'm wondering if there's anything else you'd want to highlight, whether you do still have some open roles, or anything else that you'd want to shout out to the group before we switch to the networking platform.
I think I'm very grateful and appreciative of this community. Like I said, it was extremely helpful with the CS platform selection. The templates and things I've gotten from my peers have been great. And I think that's the wonderful thing about CS, right? I think this, as a community, we're very open, we're sharing information, we're all learning from each other, and I think we're all figuring this thing out, right? So I think that's great, and I think I want to continue it on and pass it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Very collaborative. I just dropped a link in the chat, so we're going to leave our Zoom meeting and go over to a platform called Kumo Space. Some of you who've done this with us before will already have a Kumo Space account, but if you don't have one, you'll have to quickly create your account. I think and hope it'll take you less than 10 seconds to do that. And we're going to transition to this. It's kind of a 2-dimensional space that allows us to move around and introduce ourselves to each other a little bit more. But yeah, if you can't join us, totally fine. Appreciate it. Glad you were here. And if you can, we'd love to have a little bit more of an informal chat after this. So please go ahead to that link. You can go ahead and start creating your account, and we'll see you there shortly. And Sean, thank you again so much for this. I know it is brief, but really uniquely valuable to be able to speak to a CS leader and kind of hear from your perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. I had a great time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll see you on the other side.
All right.